Hi folks, welcome back to Atebeno Bark for some behind the scenes work. This is a service facilities compound build, and you'll see that I lost some of the video on some of the builds on this, so there are some spaces and a little jumps here and there. So we're starting with finishing out the basic work I did to build one of these facility buildings. You can see there were three in a row just before we pulled in on the roof here. Uh, and it's styled like an old style factory where they used this serrated roof to set up uh, ways to trap light in to help light the building. Of course, not necessarily needed modernly, but it gives an industrial feel to these buildings, which I wanted. And I'm going to be doing a trim on them to echo some of the trim on the backside of the genetics lab, which is also part of the compound here, as well as that power plant, which services all the buildings in the compound and more around it. So you can see me using the metal column to make these bands, and now I'm using a window to set up in imitation of the garage doors on the genetics lab, what I think is supposed to be a light system to throw light down on the door area. These buildings will have an exterior personnel door next to the uh, garage door, as seen on the genetics lab. Just one per backside, but two on the internal compound side. And those, at least one of those will have a window as well, because that's the protected side of the compound. Uh, and I'm able to save time by working this one building, getting all the elements on it in place, including things like the concrete slab here um, at the personnel door. I will probably eventually be extending the asphalt out around here because the vehicles would need it. Uh, the doors would conceal a loading dock. It's covered in internal because this compound is also intended to protect staff and facilities from possible escaped animals and possibly also serve as a refuge for guests. Now, the AIs probably won't send them here and stuff, but it's headcanon. Uh, it would make sense to have the, the things that keep the park running uh, safe from these large animals rampaging through the area. But in any case, that's how I'm building it. Uh, so I will be using some barrier fence for some of its perimeter. And some of that's already in place. Uh, you may have caught a glimpse of barrier on this side of the compound and also another on the far side. You can see it in the background there. So this is the duplication phase. So 3 buildings, and I need to distinguish them. So my plan is to number them. And it dawned on me after the fact that I should have numbers on both sides so that staff can, you know, especially new staff, can see and understand where to go when told to go to facilities building number 1, 2, or 3. Uh, no interiors because we don't have the props for it. And also it's holding space just in case the developers decide to grace us with some functional facility buildings that will work some feature in the game. So 3 buildings, and you can see you weren't here for those posts on the outside there, which would prevent trucks from hitting the wall of the building while they're trying to back up to the loading dock. You know, don't want them hitting the wall. Too expensive. The concrete pillars are a reasonable insurance policy for that. At least that's what the lawyers tell me. The other building, which is taller than these warehouses, is a veterinarian's lab and facility. The upper level, which will get windows all around it, is offices, library, conference rooms, stuff like that. And the lower level would be the functioning stuff. There is going to be a central, somewhat nice entrance because the park might be selling uh, extra tours to come in here, like they do with the genetics lab. And you want to have a nice entry for any guests that are going to be using it. Just on the left side of the building, there's another small bump out, and that's a guard post. The guard who operates the gate into the compound for vehicles uh, stays there, and he'll have a window where he can see approaching vehicles so that he can either come out to greet them or go inside to operate the gate mechanism for it to slide back and allow the vehicle to enter. This would be necessary for transport of some of the medium-sized animals, well, the small ones too. But the big ones would be so big, you really don't want them coming out of that building at full sizes. You know, uh, a sauropod would just barely manage to squeeze into that little um, greenery area on one end of the building. And if you're trying to breed a couple at once, where have they been living, or even just sitting in their uh, forced growth containers uh, till they got that big? So we have to use a little bit of imagination to think about how big these buildings need to be to do their jobs. There's also a little compromise when you do a game. You know, you don't want your whole map to be facilities. You want habitats. You want to be able to see the animals. That's what most people are attracted by. Me, I'm always a little bit different about things, so I like the backstage stuff. I think it's interesting, and I want to have some of that in the park, or at least uh, something of a simulated backstage. Uh, so you can see the gate I put down there, built out of modular parts. It doesn't really function, but the idea was a very strong, top grade fence that is rolled back to allow vehicles to come in. As I'm sure you're observing, it takes a while to trick out these buildings with their surface decoration um, and to get it where you want it to be. You'll you probably noticed how the front of the building was decorated in that first thumbnail picture, and you won't see me doing that because that's among the video that I lost or didn't record while I was working on this section of the park. Uh, so you'll have to enjoy what you see in that photo or wait for the park tour after things are built. Um, so uh, this is interesting for me to do. I don't know how interesting it is for you to watch, but I know some people are interested in this kind of thing. If buildings aren't your thing, skip on to the next animal video or the habitat video, whatever floats your boat. It's okay. Um, but this is what I'm doing while building the park, and I wanted to have this trying out a build where this compound is somewhat inside the park. It's not at the edge, which would give a shorter logistics run to the various areas of the park. It probably would need to have, at least staging warehouse facilities further away because this is a bloody big park. And even with 3 warehouses to store food and other things that the animals need, uh, these are dinosaurs we're talking about. They eat a lot. Uh, Maybe not as much as mammals of their size, but they are big. Some of them are the biggest land animals to walk the earth. And, sooner or later, we'll be having one of those in the park, right? and you'd have to feed it, and you don't want to, truck in its food every day necessarily. You need to have a little buffer all the time. And from what I understand, from what devs have said in the past, that will be uh, a feature balancing your food supplies, so you don't spend too much money stockpiling it, and but you still have some on hand in case you can't get a delivery or some such thing. Uh, it was more talked about when these parks were all going to be on islands, uh, but it's a principle that applies to something where you have this many big animals. You got to think ahead. You got to be prepared. You know, some of the areas will have storms, and that could disrupt deliveries. Um, you know, a little bit of verisimilitude in your management game goes a long way. Um, you're probably noticing I'm still doing windows here. They were being fussy because I didn't get uh, the uh, the trim all perfectly lined up. I was doing it by eye rather than something. Maybe I should have put the windows in first. Uh, but once all that work had already been done, it seemed to me to be easier to adjust individual windows to get them to look okay rather than go start the whole thing over from scratch. And it was a pain, but came out reasonably okay. So after all the windows, I moved on to a little bit more trim work and also on to that guard station that I mentioned earlier, because it needed to have window and doors put in to make it look like it might have some function. And that starts as soon as I bring the windows over to its side of the building. And yeah, those all lined up decently, and I managed to duplicate extras so they get to go away. Uh, for some reason, whether it's me or the game, there seem to be an awful lot of extra duplications, which makes extra work, and it's not fun. Uh, but it's what's happening, so I have to work with that. So there's the viewing window. I want to get it stretched to give the guard a good view there. And since I want to put a roofish thing on there to finish off that top, I had to raise the decorative end bars there. And he gets a concrete slab as well, but I wanted to run from the gate up to past the building itself. And as usual, the grass needs to be eliminated so it doesn't come poking through the concrete or the asphalt. And I decided to go with a frame around the door, even though I'm setting it in the recess of one of these doorway walls, just because I thought it would look better. Uh, Plain door, I actually wish we had some even plainer doors, like steel face doors. I think that would be a much better choice for this particular door in particular, uh, because it's not going to get a safety uh, and closure feature that some of the other doors and those open passageways out of the compound area are going to get. So the next bit you'll see me is starting to prep to work on the roof, and that's part of the lost video too. So you won't see the roof proper, and we're about to move into a more of a tour part of the video. So there's the entrance, as you may remember, from the park to the genetics lab, and it's all landscaped and stuff, and you get to the guests get to look at the pretty side of the building, and their paths will not go around to the back as we're going to do right now. Uh, so there's another gate here. You see those round circles in front of it? Those are sunken concrete columns. because I envision these are raisable, much like anti-terrorist barriers. Uh, but because of the sudden nature of an animal attack, these things are probably piston driven to raise them quickly enough against weak points like the gate when an animal might break through. Um, and they also show up on all those roads that don't have gates as well. Uh, so you get a nice look at the three warehouse slash facility buildings, and you can see that the whole inner compound is asphalt now, and uh, behind the facility buildings you can see the vet building. Yeah, the cursor just circled some of those concrete dots there that are intended to be functional in headcanon, even though they won't be functional in the game. And there's our decorated front lab with its building. I'd love to put some kind of logo on those circles, but I don't have the tools to do what I'd like to do yet. I'm hoping the devs will supply them at some point. We got plantings around the front of the building so that that entrance for those special VIPs who come in to visit the lab have something nice to look at. Hey, so what do you think, guys? And here's another look at that sliding gate, a little more of a close-up. Uh, I really wish I'd gotten to do, to, well, gotten a copy of that video that I could have used for this, of putting those pieces together. It's an independent barrier wall piece. The barrier wall there is concrete over the big metal fence. The PK fences double up nicely to give you different effects, and that's one of them. So zooming out a little bit, it's time to do the usual, give me a thumbs up if you like the video, uh, subscribe if you want to encourage me to make more, and that's pretty much what I've got for you today. And I will be going back to animal stuff in the next video, and I guess I will see you there. So thanks for stopping by, folks. I hope you'll stop by again and visit Dino Bob in his park building adventures. Bye now.